even when we have faith that this great leap of a tenfold growth will be realized, we must not lose focus of our long-term development vision, of Vision 2040, which emphasizes harnessing strategic opportunities in the areas of oil and gas, tourism, minerals, ICT business, human capital development, industrialization, and agriculture, among others. Uganda's economy has remained resilient post the COVID era and is on a steady growth path. The existing external shocks precipitated by the conflicts in the Middle East and Eastern Europe that continue to affect the global supply chain and have affected the availability of concessional loans, affected fuel prices, and also affected the growth and expansion of the East African trade bloc. These knock-on effects continue to negatively affect our economic growth and service delivery in the country. However, we are already seeing bright spots emerging in our economy. For instance, the high appetite for the Ugandan coffee in the global market and the rising coffee prices. If we add value to our coffee in Uganda, this will trickle down to the farmers at the grassroots and improve household income, which is a catalyst for attaining upper middle income status, which is a desired position for Uganda. NTV remains committed to playing its civic duty of organizing informed and robust debates on matters of national interest. We are confident that today's discussion will share insights into how Uganda's economy can grow tenfold to realize the desired upper middle income status as a country. With those few words, I thank you all for coming, and it's my pleasure to invite the board chairman, Nation Media Group, to give his remarks. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Johnson. Where I was seated at that table, Patrick accused us of complaining about how the public sector behaves, and here we are behaving like the public sector. But good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, and welcome to this 8th Economic Summit between the Ministry of Finance and NTV. Opportunities to financing tenfold growth. It sounds impossible. It sounds undoable. But I think Uganda is at that level where with a small tweak, with a bit of thinking, we are going to be able to take off. I am part of the panel, and I wouldn't want to divulge my thoughts on what I think we need to do in terms of takeoff. So I will leave that conversation for then. But looking around, you can see that a lot is going on in terms of mobilizing people. And one of the clearest examples of the capacity of what happens when you mobilize people is what we have seen with coffee. Not only have we seen parliamentarians fighting over coffee, but we have seen revenues from coffee increasing. And that is because of the campaigns that have been undertaken. What does that mean to us? It means that once we are able to provide leadership, our people will fall in place and they will do wonders. And I'll speak to that again. But definitely, coffee is beginning to show us what we need to do. Sarah, I see you and I were in OWC for quite some time. I don't know if you're still there, but I recall around 2016, we said 20 million bags by 2020. I don't know if you remember that campaign with NADS and OWC. We didn't get to 20 million bags, and we must ask, why did we not get to 20 million bags? But we did distribute a lot of coffee seedlings nevertheless, and these are the results that we're beginning to see. But they're still not as good as we expect. So the meeting should be asking, what are those bottlenecks that are keeping us from that concept of 20 million bags? That time we talked about people coming all the way from Vietnam to learn how to grow coffee. Today, those people export more coffee than us, and we're still talking about 20 million bags by 2020. And it is 2024. So there are quite a number of things, for me, that we need to tweak in terms of takeoff. And I can keep on thinking and thinking about these things. This weekend, I was in Lugazi. In Lugazi, they were celebrating the centenary, 100 years. And the old man, Mr. Mehta, the chairman, is about 93, I think. He came to speak to us at the end of the golf tournament. And these were his words. He said the government of Uganda promised the Kampala-Jinja Expressway 10 years ago. He went into negotiations with the government and promised that he would provide 200 acres of land, 1, to put up a golf course, 2, to put up a very nice hotel, and 3, to put up other sports facilities. So for those of us who play golf, the golf course is ready. The hotel has not been built, and the swimming pool and other facilities are not there. And to the old man, the reason is very simple. The Kampala-Jinja Expressway is nowhere. And these are the questions we must ask ourselves. How do we get from the talking shop to action? The Jinja Expressway is a very sore sight, or it's a very painful thing if you look at the road in the condition it is now. But this is our route to the sea. And how can it be like that? Now, getting from Lugazi to Kampala takes about 3 hours through the potholes, through the dangerous driving on the road, and very many vulgar words that you have to say to the other road users as you navigate your way here. So these are the things that we have to ask ourselves, that what does it take to change the speed of action, the speed of implementation, the speed of execution for us to achieve the tenfold growth that we want. All other things are in place. Apart from that, from us having that eureka moment about what it is going to take for us to do the things that we know we have to do to get the tenfold growth. We need this tenfold growth, otherwise we're in trouble. It is estimated that by 2050, we might be the most populous country in East Africa. So by 2050, we will get to 100 million people, right? A lot of the anger you see today among the youth, among the millennials, among the Gen Zs, is about we, the baby boomers, and all those in between who are in charge of this country, failing to deliver hope to these people. So what must we do to deal with this population bulge? A while ago, we were talking about this and saying this is a population dividend. It can only be a population dividend if it is distributed, if it is productive. So these questions still face us today, and I hope that as we go through this afternoon and share our thoughts on what it takes, we will leave here with very, very clear resolutions and action points regarding what needs to be done in order to get the tenfold growth. Opportunities are myriad. Everywhere you look, I see opportunities. So it's very difficult for me to say that this is what you should do or this is what you should do. Uganda is open for business, and everything that you touch, if you have the right mix of resources and you get things right, will turn into money. And that is what the connection we are still failing to make. Other countries in the world have made it. You could start in Singapore, you could move to Dubai, you could move to some of our neighbors, and you see that change is moving at a faster rate. So what are those opportunities? I look at Kampala itself, and I see an opportunity for raising the whole place and building a new city. You can't put lipstick on a pig. It will remain a pig. Okay, so that's why I was pitying the 13 who are the number 13. I was pitying the 13 who are competing for this job, because there must be very many other things we put in place for these things to change. So the opportunities are myriad. How are we going to make these things work? So I do hope that we will be able to speak candidly, speak constructively, and ensure that we action some of these things over the next 10 years. Lastly, let me take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. I can see NSSF, I see UDC, I don't know all the others whose billboards here I can't see. I see Uganda Breweries. Of course, you would have killed me on Friday, right? So I must say that. Okay, Bank of Uganda and all the others whom I haven't mentioned. Thank you so much for continuing to believe. Thank you so much for continuing to support NTV and Nation Media Group and Uganda as a country. I do hope that you enjoy the deliberations and we do find a way to achieve our dream of tenfold growth. Thank you so much for listening, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor. Another round of applause for Professor Sejaka. Once again, Professor Sejaka is the chairman, NMG. As you know, NTV lies within that umbrella entity called Nation Media Group. So quite interesting points there raised. Actually, key takeaways, if we don't grow to that number by 2040, we are in trouble. Now, I was asking someone, an economist, who I will not mention, and he told me that for us to tick that box, we have to grow every year by 16%. Now, look at our growth rate today and try to visualize and internalize that number. So the reason why you're here, ladies and gentlemen, is to pick your minds on how do we free the sectors that need to be freed or explored, to make sure that we tick this box. So I would like to again recognize in our midst the presence of Mr. Moses Kagwa, the representative of the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance. You're most welcome, Mr. Kagwa. Then special recognition to Mr. Patrick Ayota, the MD of NSSF. You're most welcome. Mr. Andrew Kilonzo, the MD EBL. You're most welcome. I've seen civil society represented quite well here. My friend Julius Mokonda from CSBAC, you're most welcome. Good. Now, without any further ado, let me take the opportunity to invite my general manager, who is going to make an invitation to our guest of honor to give his speech before we go into the panel discussion.
Mr. Moses Kagwa, please step forward to deliver your remarks, sir. Representing the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Ramadan Gobi.
Oh, no preamble, just straight into everything. I don't see any minister here, but we had written for the ministers, members of parliament, senior officials from the government of Uganda, private sector leaders, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my distinct honor to address you at this year's Economic Summit, convened under the timely theme of opportunities to financing the tenfold growth. This forum emphasizes our collective resolve to advance Uganda's economic transformation agenda, which is embodied in the ambition to grow our economy tenfold by 2040 in a transformative, inclusive, and sustainable manner. The prospects of doubling Uganda's GDP size every 5 years for the next 15 years is inspiring. The tenfold growth vision is more than an economic aspiration. It represents our nation's blueprint for achieving shared prosperity. Expanding our GDP from a base of US dollars 53 billion to US dollars 500 billion by 2040 is a journey that demands resilience, innovation, and above all, financing strategies that match the scale of our ambition. Over the past decade, we have had a strong foundation for this leap. Our economy has tripled in size from shillings 65 trillion in financial year 2010-2011 to about 205 trillion in financial year 2023-2024. Life expectancy has improved from 63 years in 2011 to 68 years in 2022, and the country has graduated from low to medium human capital development index rank. We have diversified our export basket significantly, moving away from traditional agriculture exports to extractives and tourism, among others. As of 2021, Uganda's top exports are gold at 36.8%, travel and tourism 17.2%, coffee 10.51%, ICT 9.73%, transport 3.22%, cocoa beans 1.81%, sugar and sucrose 1.2%, insurance and finance 1.07%, and preserved fish 1%, among others. Meeting the target set for 2040 will require us to redouble our efforts to strategic financing and resource mobilization. Achieving a tenfold increase in GDP necessitates scaling up investments to about 40% of GDP. Therefore, the financing plan integrates domestic revenue mobilization, strategic use of debt market instruments, leveraging private capital, and attracting foreign direct investment flows, among others. The tenfold economic growth strategy is anchored on 4 strategic areas with high potential for accelerating economic growth, and these are transformative in nature. These sectors are agro-industrialization and light manufacturing, with a focus on full commercialization and formalizing agro-farming, as well as undertaking strategic value addition for export. 2, tourism development, with a focus on increasing tourist arrivals by 5-fold under the current spend per tourist and stay of length. 3, mineral development, including oil and gas, with a focus on undertaking quantification of mapped mineral deposits and their governance regime, and delivering of fast oil as we prepare for commercializing operations of the petrochemical industry. And 4, science, technology, and innovation, including ICT, with a focus on fast-tracking commercialization of ongoing innovations in pathogen control and management for vaccine, diagnostics, and therapeutics. The ATMs, we call them the ATMs, are underpinned by the goal of full monetization of Uganda's economy by eliminating the 39% subsistence economy, which in the recent census went to 33, and reducing size of the informal sector. In agro-industrialization and light manufacturing, the target is to generate annual export earnings of $20 billion by 2039-2040. Tourism development, the target is to generate annual export earnings of $50 billion. Mineral-based industrial development, including oil and gas, the target is to generate annual export earnings of $25 billion. Science, technology, and innovation, including the creative industry and ICT, this is a multiplier anchor program with a huge economy-wide growth impact. The implication of growing the economy tenfold, therefore, means 1, shifting the economic growth rate to a higher trajectory, to an average real economic growth of about 8% per annum. With the onset of commercial production of oil and gas, this growth will go to double digits. 2, more than doubling the size of the economy GDP every 5 years in the next 15 years. 3, raising per capita GDP 6-fold from the current $1,146 to almost $7,000 by 2040. 4, doubling the level of savings in the economy from 20% of GDP to 40% of GDP in 2040 to match the required level of investment. 5, raise the share of exports in GDP from 15% in financial year 2022-23 to 50%, and the share of manufactured products in merchandise exports from 13% to 50%, and medium high-tech exports from 21% to 50% by 2040. And lastly, increase the annual FDI inflows from $3.01 billion as at April 2024, driven by investments in oil and gas, to $50 billion by 2040. Therefore, to achieve this ambition, we shall undertake a change in the execution of public businesses to take full advantage of the new ways of doing things, especially with emerging technologies, invest in new sources of growth, that is, the new emerging sectors, and leverage the new markets, trade, and economic relationships. What are the opportunities for financing the tenfold economic growth strategy? The strategy requires diversifying sources of income, which at the same time requires maintaining macroeconomic stability, such as low inflation, a stable exchange rate, and debt sustainability. These sources include: 1, repurposing the budget resources. The immediate source of funding the strategy is to repurpose the resources in the current medium-term expenditure framework and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the utilization of available resources. This requires focusing on sectors of the economy that have high economic growth potential, export growth, and job creation. This will require deepening the fiscal consolidation, such as the ongoing rationalization of government institutions, greater accountability for tax expenditures, improving return on public investments by improving further public investment management systems, and project readiness. The repurposing of the budget is currently ongoing. The budget allocation in the ATMS areas has increased from 3.591 trillion in financial year 23-24 to 4.792 trillion shillings in this financial year. 2 is the effective implementation of the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. The implementation of this strategy is now at full gear. We aim to increase domestic revenue from 14% of GDP in financial year 22-23 to 30% by financial year 2039-40. This will be achieved through enhanced tax reforms, digital payment systems, and reducing leakages in revenue collection. These revenue mobilization efforts will be sustained while at the same time supporting business growth. Revenue collections have improved significantly, expected to be surpassing the collection target of 0.5 percentage points per annum this financial year. Total revenue collections were shillings 27.8 trillion in financial year 23-24, equivalent to 13.7% of GDP, and we expect to collect 31.891 trillion this financial year, equivalent to 14.2% of GDP. The government, this is the third, will strengthen its partnership with development financial institutions to access and leverage affordable external financing from institutions such as the World Bank, African Development Bank, and Islamic Development Bank. While debt financing remains an integral part of the strategy, government will ensure long-term debt sustainability. By prioritizing concessional loans and improved efficiency in debt utilization, we aim to bring total debt down to 40% of GDP by 2040. 4, leveraging private capital. Incentivizing the diversification of private capital to balance government securities vis-à-vis other forms of private finance, for example, equities. Currently, 78% of long-term capital, such as pension funds, are being invested in government treasury bills and bonds. Only 2.4% is in private equities. Policy reforms are required to incentivize these funds to be invested in equities and other forms to support private sector interventions and investments. Many countries around the world finance their development programs using domestic savings in the form of pensions and other long-term savings. We therefore need to rethink the reform of the pension sector, insurance and capital markets to unlock the huge financing potential that the country has. 5, self-financing of mineral sector through conglomerate of Uganda equity companies. Uganda is immensely endowed with natural resources, including huge deposits of minerals. These are mineral resources. There are mineral resources almost in all parts of the country. These reserves are almost equivalent to cash, and they can be organized in a manner that generates significant financing for the sector itself and also other sectors. The proposal for financing the development of the mineral sector is to form a conglomerate of equity companies around the mineral reserves, assets owned by government, and attract private capital by listing of shares. These shares can be listed here in Uganda, but also within the ESC region. Further exploration and development of oil and gas reserves to increase revenues that can finance other sources of the economy. You have heard about the newly discovered oil and gas reserves around Lake Kyoga and many other parts of the country. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development has issued more additional exploration licenses for the development of these reserves. This will generate significantly more revenue for the government, including in the sales of crude oil and gas, royalties and taxes. The government has put in place a fiscal rule to guide the prudent utilization of these oil and gas revenues in a manner that is transformative. The government has also established the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative Unit to help in tracking and monitoring the governance of oil and gas resources. We have just launched the third EATI report today. We know that the oil and gas sector itself does not create a lot of jobs because it is capital intensive and requires highly specialized experts. However, to provide a resource for other industries to develop, such as the petrochemical industry that employ many people. It also provides financing for improving productivity and competitiveness in other non-oil sectors of the economy, especially those that are export-oriented. 7, provision of affordable capital through government initiatives. Leveraging affordable and sustainable financing through adequate capitalization of Uganda Development Bank, Uganda Development Corporation, Agricultural Credit Facility, Small Business Recovery Fund, EMIOGA, and PDM. Government has capitalized UDB by providing over $2 trillion to support manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and small businesses, as well as environmentally friendly projects. This financial year, government has provided 100 billion shillings under UDC to support the private sector through equity arrangement and restructuring of companies that were affected by COVID-19. The Agricultural Credit Facility at Bank of Uganda has disbursed over 380 billion since its establishment to support agricultural production. Similarly, the Small Business Recovery Fund, which was initially established to rescue small businesses that were affected by COVID, was capitalized by 100 billion shillings by government, with an equal match by the commercial banks. The EMIOGA Wealth Fund has to date provided over 200 billion shillings to various enterprises under the EMIOGA circles. The PDM will be almost 3 trillion shillings by the end of this financial year, which is the program to transform households from subsistence economy to the money economy. Government has also mobilized resources under the Investment for Industrial Transformation and Employment, that is INVITE, and the Generating Growth Opportunities and Productivity for Women Enterprises, GROW, projects to support manufacturing and value addition equivalent to almost 1.5 trillion shillings. This is through concessional loans and grants from the World Bank. 8, promoting corporate debt finance. Incentivizing and promoting corporate debt finance to relieve government of the debt burden, e.g., corporate bonds with more affordable terms for institutions like UDB, UDC, and National Water and Sewage Corporation. This method of financing is appropriate for public institutions that are generating revenue by selling services to the public, such as power companies, water corporations, and the telecoms. Because they have continuous revenue streams, they can ably raise capital by themselves and be able to repay their debts in case they borrow. This has the benefit of reducing the direct financing burden to government. Of course, it means that these institutions must be governed well. Foreign direct investment. Attracting more foreign direct investment will be critical for shifting our economic growth trajectory to a higher level through sound economic and financial policies, infrastructure development, reducing the cost of doing business, improving governance of government institutions and corporate sector. Uganda has invested heavily in infrastructure development and has therefore built a firm foundation to attract foreign and local investors. We have a relatively well-trained workforce that can easily adapt to the required labor needs. We, however, need more specialization in various areas, especially in the industrial areas and modern technologies. Most importantly, Uganda has a business-friendly policy environment that is attractive and supports private investment. We have a competitive and liberal exchange rate. Both the current and capital accounts are open, meaning that investors are free to bring in money and also take it out. This policy framework is therefore attractive to FDI, and we shall continue to improve and attract more foreign capital. Increasing PPPs. Integrating PPPs in both social and economic sectors, roads, institutional housing, waste management, etc., will provide with PPPs will provide an avenue for attracting capital into large projects such as power dams, highways, housing projects, etc. We have a PP law and a PP unit that is currently fully operational. The projects under the PPP unit, Professor Sejaka would love to hear this, include Kampala-Jinja Expressway, Uganda Rural Water Development Project, Multimodal Logistics Hub in Gulu, redevelopment of National Council of Sports Facilities at Lugogo, Entebbe Iconic ICT Park, Kampala Waste Management, and I think that will be pleasing to everybody to hear, Uganda National Culture Center Land Redevelopment Project, and the Soluble Coffee Processing Plant. These are estimated at US dollars 2.32 billion. Others in the pipeline include Chambogo University Student Accommodation, Chambogo University Sports and Business Complex, Information Communication Technology and Business Process Outsourcing Park in Entebbe, Soroti University, Soroti District Affordable Housing, and Arua Multipurpose Resource Center. Diversifying development finance into new alternatives. Diversifying public finance options by implementing the public investment financing strategy, including concessional and commercial loans, Islamic finance, climate finance, and others. The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has established a climate finance unit, which is currently assisting in mobilizing climate finance. In conclusion, the financing demands for this agenda are ambitious but achievable. Success will hinge on partnerships between government, private sector, development partners, and the citizens. This forum is therefore an opportunity to harness collective wisdom, explore innovative ideas, and align our efforts with Uganda's long-term development aspirations. As we deliberate today, let us remain steadfast in our shared commitment to transforming Uganda into a higher middle-income economy within the next 2 decades. Together, we can redefine the trajectory of our nation's economic development, ensuring that no one is left behind. For God and my country. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Kagwa. Another round of applause for Mr. Kagwa. That speech is quite crucial for this discussion and debate because Mr. Kagwa went into details on how we are getting to the target. And I think this is now setting a very good platform for us to discuss and have a meeting of minds and go into, get the right context and perspective on how to go about this. So we're going to go into another session, which is a panel discussion. And here we're going now to, like they said, try and split the atom. And with all your involvement and input is going to be quite critical. Because after that discussion, we're going to have a Q&A session again. Now, as I invite Dr. Fred Muhumuza, who's going to handle our next session, I'd like to give special recognition for Uma. I see my friend Senyondwa is here. You're most welcome. Then the Financial Literacy Association of Uganda, Daniel, you're most welcome. And then I've seen Patronella from Deloitte. You're most welcome. So, Doctor, you can take over the floor. Thank you.
Whoever has been here is taller than me, which is a good thing also to show you that I don't know whether people know that. We can't get tenfold growth if we don't invest on the ground. So the nearer to the ground, the better. It's not about being macro up there. Beans and cassava and tomatoes grow on the ground. And I'll really begin with the history of the NTV Ministry of Finance Economic Summits. This is the 8th. I was here on the very first one. And in that first one, we brought a keynote speaker who came in from Ethiopia. And Ethiopia was at the time, these are 10 years of expressways that haven't happened. Ethiopia was at the time investing in the leather industry to make shoes in partnership with the Chinese. And the Chinese had selected Ethiopia as a place where they were going to put that shoe manufacturing factory. So now, we are interested in knowing what did it take to choose Addis and not Kampala, Namamve, or mention it. And the lady who came here and spoke was very, very spot on. Leather quality is what they were looking for. Not just a free space serviced like we know we do our industrial parks. They said that I can do. What I can't do that I would want the government of Ethiopia to do for me is quality leather. Can you bring it in? And that was the discussion. How are you going to guarantee quality leather? And they worked backwards. We've been working with my friends and Office of the President to do theories of change. What will it take to bring leather that is of quality? It's not that you killed the cow in a nice way, abattoir or wherever. How did the cow grow? Which cow was conceived? So it went as far as that, to say which semen do you put in the cow. You're already looking at the end of quality leather. How many extension service people do I need per number of cows? How many do we have? How do we train them? So it began from manufacturing, it went into agriculture, it went into education. How do we train the necessary extension service providers? Then eventually went into research, the equivalent of NARO here. And so on the basis of such discussions that we said the best way to get tenfold growth is look at all the different pillars. Not that you want to segment production, but you want to get a clear picture. As I'm talking here, am I in education, am I in health, am I in roads? So for some of you who are still wondering, the Paris development model is not about the financial money that is given. It's about that expressway to Ginger, integrated transport network. It's about what rail, how do I get the coffee? How do I get the cocoa from the mountains in Bundibujo and get it out there? Will it still be of quality? So the conversation we are having here is quite big and broad. And so I will be bringing in a little bit of the academia. That's my space. I come to you from the Makerere University Business School. We are partners in this at the Economics Forum. And we are trying to see how do we engage the academia, not just from the teaching side, but also from the practice side. Economics has very simple things. If you want to grow your economy, you must invest. If you want to invest, you must save. Basic senior 5 economics, investment is equal to savings. But if you have a saving investment gap, you can borrow. But remember, don't just borrow. You must already have determined what am I investing in. Quite often we borrow, and then we say, okay, the money has come, what do we do? Oh, we need land. Can we go and try to buy land? The money is already costing you money. That's really the conversation the Ethiopians had in order to attract the Chinese to come in. So manufacturing, I hear, is the way to go. I don't dispute that. But it goes beyond the conversation with a paper-headed on manufacturing. It takes a whole lot of things. And my panelists are coming here to give us those realities of what happened on the ground. And it's not just packed in the panel. The conversation for today is also right where you are. So we're going to find enough time for you to give your views, because we badly need those views to multiply this economy from 50 billion to 500 billion. 4 years of those have Trump as president of the US. He has good ideas, but sometimes we don't know what he says next. But he seems to have learned something from the time he has been out of the presidency that don't shock the world. He's already giving us his policies on the first day. So they won't be tweets. We already know he's going to have 10% increment in tariffs. That even includes his neighbors, Canada and Mexico. Now, Canada, 75% of Canadian exports go to the US. So what's going to happen to the Canadian economy when where 75% of their exports go is encountering tariffs? Mexico took over from China as the leading exporter to the US. Is putting tariffs on both those. Now, tiny Uganda, where are you going to be? What do I take to the US? Trump is giving us those signals, and it's good to read them as we plan for a journey to 2040, where the GDP should be 500 billion. My panelists, please, just come. You know yourselves. Just come. Somebody told me, never introduce your panelists in an event like this. If anybody doesn't know them, the burden is on them. So if you don't know Patrick Ayota, the burden is on you. Google, you'll find out. So I'm not going to spend time. Please sit anywhere. Me, I'm not going to sit. So just sit anywhere. But should you leave a chair for me, I will take it. Now, I was told there is a seat here for any lady. Any lady is the word. And I'll tell you why. You see, the just will live by faith. They have already clapped, so you did it. Lalana, thank you. You're welcome. PSST, you have said it all. That chair is for you. You can sit in it now or later, but that chair is yours. It's not for me. So we'll decide when we get in there. For people like this, they know what they do. The first question I want to ask them is they heard him. What did you hear? What is your take? Beginning with my immediate left.
Thank you.
And
Thank
you can
you
see
very much.
today is white and black. Even Museveni left his party, now he puts on white. So this is the new party that is going to take the economy to the next level. Everybody in white, including the white tables. Patrick.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mhumza. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll start with an example, and I think Vietnam has been mentioned here. A few statistics. In 2003, Vietnam was a $50 billion economy. It will be $500 economy next year, 2025. So you can actually see what we're trying to do. We are $50 economy, $50 billion economy, we want to be 510-fold growth. 22 years. If you look at the rate of growth over those 22 years, the average growth is 11%. And I think the economist who the MEC quoted at 16%, that would be the average economic growth we need to take us from our current 50 billion to 500 billion by 2040, the next 15 years. Now, what did Vietnam do? And when I listened to the PSSD, he mentioned the high-level ATMs, what the government is doing. And if I follow what Dr. Mhumza said, let's come down now to the ground. What did Vietnam do that we can do? And I'll just point out two things, because that's where NSF kind of is playing in. The Vietnamese government made a decision that the state would intervene in agriculture. Dr. Mhumza tells about Ethiopia, and the Chinese told the Ethiopian government, we want quality, ensure that there is quality in the things we do. And Vietnam organized their coffee section, coffee sector, their primary products. They didn't leave the entire ecosystem, the entire value chain, from the farmer to the market to the private sector. They made sure they intervened. And in the process, Vietnam overtook us as a coffee exporter, as Dr. Mhumza said. The second thing they did, which was really interesting, is what Dr. Mhumza raised. They actually mobilized domestic long-term saving. In 1989, the long-term domestic saving of Vietnam was about 7%. Today, that number is 35% of GDP. And if you look at where we are today as a country, our long-term domestic savings is about 12%. And most of that is in NSSF. Why is it important that you mobilize domestic long-term savings? Because that means you can fund your development agendas, at least partially by you. Today in Uganda, we tend to go empty-handed and beg. The problem with being empty-handed is you do not control the terms under which that development partner comes. They then dictate to you what they did. No wonder when we passed the LGBT law, a lot of the development partners told us, abandon us as a country, and we all panicked. Oh my goodness, the economy is going to tanks. So it's very important that we do that. So let me just talk a little about what we're doing at NSF. Last week, Wednesday, we roll out Smart Life, domestic long-term saving for people who want to voluntarily save. As of yesterday, we've got slightly 1,200 Ugandans who have signed up. In a period of 4 days, they've got over 200 million shillings. And as we begin to do that and begin to build up a pool of our own savings as a country, we begin then to feed into what Ms. Agwagwa was talking about in those areas. And finally, in agriculture, one of the most amazing things, I think, as a country, and we're economists, please forgive me, we're economists, but we got something wrong in economists. NADS, PDA, OWC, we've made an underlying assumption that the problem in agriculture is the farmer or the supply side. So give me a little more money, give me a little quality seeds, give me heifers, give me whatever it is, and you'll sort out agriculture. And the farmers hear us, and the farmers grow. Feb this year, farmers grew maize. The price of maize was 1,000 shillings. They all harvested in June. The price of maize dropped to 400 shillings. Because we only dealt with half the equation of economics. We looked at supply and not demand. And until we fix the demand side and organize it for the farmer, the motivation to be productive will not be there. So I'll talk a little bit later about something we're trying to do about that we can bring the demand side of agriculture to bear. And as we do that and people become more and more motivated to grow, I'll finish with a little story. I have a friend of mine, like all of us who are farmers, went to Nakasongola in May, planted about 5 acres of land. First thing she planted, beans. In her mind, she's going to harvest 1,000 kilograms of beans. Beans take about 3 months. She harvests about 500 kilograms per acre. But that wasn't the problem. She couldn't sell it. She could not sell her 2,500 kilograms. And she calls and I say, hey, my friend, so you got a very low harvest. Are you going to put fertilizers next season? And she said, Patrick, why should I put fertilizers and get more beans? Right now I have a 500 kilogram per acre problem. If I got 3,000 kilograms, I'm going to end up with a 3,000 per acre problem. Why do I need that? And the point of it is, until we sort out the market side, organize it. When we say there's a market in Algeria for milk, that's high level. We need to come down here and figure out how do we get that milk from here to there. Not, the private sector doesn't have the resources for it. How does the state help us do that? And we tap that we bring that bridge and it works. That's what we want to do. Thank you.
I told you if you don't come down, you're going to speak high-level things. And when you are quarreling down where the traffic jam is, vulgar words come up. Prof told us. Economists quite often use Say's law. Supply will create its own demand. The beans was supply. The demand was never there. Some of us who grew up in the village, we know the only time supply creates its own demand is if you defecate in the bush. You will never know where the flies come from. That supply is guaranteed to create the demand, but it comes with the diseases and creates another problem. Are we seeing the entire value chain? I hear people are buying tractors, giving them out. Prof, what did you take? I don't want to be vulgar again, save me the burden. I wasn't vulgar anyway. I deal with wash and open defecation is a problem we want to resolve. So I was speaking from my space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muhumuza. Speaking about vulgarity, I must start with a Kalango. I am going to start rewriting bordernomics. So you better look for bordernomics on X. It will start coming out tomorrow. And I'll be talking about vulgarity. That is a Kalango. As the chairman, I'm allowed to. Patrick, you spoke about long-term savings. And it struck me that you have most of them. Guess what's the next big amount? It is Old Mutual, and I'm the chairman. So a lot of your money is right here. And that should worry us, that there is not enough of that money, okay? But speaking to what is the topic today, The first thing I will take from what PSST said, he said that we now have human resources. I have been teaching since 1991. I don't know how many were not born who are in this room, but I've been teaching since 1991. And Patrick, I'm one of the few people who will never run out of a job, because there is so much demand for knowledge, and there are no people who can work. So if we want to take off and achieve this tenfold growth, there are three things we must do. The first one is human resources. The second one is human resources. And the third one is human resources. What do I mean? One, we must create a labor force with the relevant skills. If I ask you today, and I get very many calls every day, Prof, please find me an accountant. There are no accountants in this economy. They are not there. I mean CPAs, not bookkeepers. There are no CPAs in this economy. I train accountants. They are not there. So PSST, you said that you have quality labor in this country. We don't. We don't. I have been in the insurance industry. I see Patrick there, our MD for Old Mutual. We import actuaries. We pay for actuaries to come here. So, I mean, we need relevant skills. That's the first, human resources. Two, let me talk about productivity. I see Mzee Onege Obel is here, and I always say, we have had very many arguments with PSST. I said, if you want to know if an economy is growing, there are only two things that matter. The first one is productivity. The second one is the number of jobs created in that economy. Those are the only two measures that shows you that an economy is performing. The rest is ebigenderako. So, relevant skills to productivity. And we have research on productivity in Uganda and in the region, and I can tell you that is what you see in all the big organizations in this country. You will find a foreigner there. It is not by accident. It is because productivity is a problem for us. Three, research and innovation. Where are our homegrown ideas? Where do we start believing in ourselves? You see, we don't even believe in ourselves. If a person like myself came up with a good idea that can help this country, it will be ignored. But you will get some flyby consultant from the World Bank or from wherever, and the guy will be listened to. He will even have photo opportunities. I don't get those photo opportunities. So where are our local ideas? When do we begin to think about it? So for me, the first thing that we're going to do to achieve the tenfold growth is human resources. We've got to get human resources right. If you look at the whole spectrum of the education system, we have a problem, ladies and gentlemen. You have graduates who cannot write. You have graduates who cannot think. You have a labor force that is not productive. This is a big problem, and I have a lot of experience in it. So that is the first thing I want to bring out. Two, If we want tenfold growth, we have spoken about this problem. I have been the chairman of UDB. I have been the chairman of the Investment Advisory Committee of the Petroleum Fund. Nothing. Nothing. It is all talk. We have failed to deal with the issue of the cost of money. Just yesterday, somebody was saying we cap interest rates for lenders, private lenders. And that is against all the principles of economics we know. How are you going to enforce those things? Bwana PSST. It is like those people who are discussing bedroom matters between the genders in the parliament, and they legislated. Some of the things on which we waste time are not even possible. So how are you going to enforce that those people don't lend at 2.8% per month? So the cost of financing is a real problem. And the question that we must address is, how do we reduce the cost of money in this country? Certainly there are things we can do. Again, still talking about money. How do we identify patient capital? Again, PSST, I heard you saying you have put a lot of money in UDB. Thank you so much if you have put it. But people who go there, they are accused. There are people who have waited for a year to access money from UDB. What is the problem? There is something we are not doing right. And I talked about it when I was welcoming you, that we've got to tweak the problem of execution. How do you move from ideas to action? And we have a problem there. We know what to do probably, but we are not able to make that connection. The moment we make that connection, tenfold growth is going to happen. It's going to be magical. There's going to be a sea change. Number 3, under cost of money. How do we mobilize resources internally? Again, Bwana PSST, this Kampala-Jinja Expressway, you have said you have found money. But where is it? But my friend here, Patrick, has money. Why are we looking outside of this country? Why don't we have infrastructure bonds? We've talked about these things here. So moving from paper to execution has remained a problem. We already have the Entebbe Expressway, isn't it? And they're collecting money on it. And it works. So the model works.
We asked the children, how many of you brushed this morning? And this little boy, his hand didn't go up. And I said, well, why didn't you brush this morning? He said, my brother was using the toothbrush. If I'd waited for him, I would have been late for school. I'm sorry, I get a bit emotional when it comes to that. To be able to change a child's life, to be able to bring back that confidence about their smile, for me, is phenomenal.
A smile that is white, fresh and beautiful is a smile to be proud of. Discover new Colgate White and Fresh for the whole family with high quality and an incredible price.
There is myths that so many of you live by. If your eye is twitching, it means you're going to see someone you like. If it shines and rains at the same time, it means a leopard is giving birth. If your hand is itching, it means you're going to get money. If you see an owl it means somebody's gonna die. If you hear of a disease outbreak, you just know it is in a village district at the border next to some suspicious country. You will want to scratch that last myth, because Mpox is in 19 districts and Kampala is among with dozens of cases. Please stop going around checking anyone's hand. Mpox kills. Protect your loved ones.
Step into a night of grandeur as we honor the visionaries driving Uganda's economic future. On November 29th, 2024, the prestigious Top 100 SME Awards Gala Dinner will bring together the brightest entrepreneurs, setting the stage for a night of inspiration, celebration, and excellence. Join us on the red carpet as we recognize the dedication, resilience, and impact of Uganda's most remarkable SMEs. Secure your seat for a memorable evening. Individual tickets are available for 400,000 shillings or reserve a table for 10 at 3.5 million shillings. To book, call Salome on 0772 416 356. Proudly presented by Daily Monitor and KPMG with support of the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Innovation Village, Uganda Securities Exchange, Huawei Technologies, Uganda Breweries Limited, and powered by Equity Bank. You're listening, caring partner.
All right, listen up. Colocate is on a mission. It makes our gums happy and our teeth strong. See? We're moving forward and making changes.
It's kind of a big thing.
Colgate Herbal uses traditional nature's herbs and combines it with Colgate Science for healthy gums and strong teeth.
And we'll leave no smile behind.
But a view of increasing productivity, the person said, no, don't tell me that problem. So it looks like our solution is lying in the problem. How do we solve some of these issues? Prof, I don't want to say the transition is already happening. If you're waiting for it to happen, it looks like the transition is already happening. So how do we manage a transition? I was a small boy when the war was ongoing. And even my home was a command post in Hoima for General Tinyafunza when he captured the town. That means I had been evicted because I couldn't be in the middle of that front. But one way to really capture the enemy is when the enemy is in transition, shifting from one point to another point. That's when the ambushes are laid. But sometimes you have to attack the enemy and get them out of their safe positions. In our transition from 50 billion to 500, who is waiting for us? Do we know them? Are we aware of them? And they may be non-intelligent enemies. I always say flood is not your enemy. It doesn't know you exist. But it can disrupt your program. So don't say I'm late because of the flood. The flood didn't know you exist. It's a non-intelligent enemy. It's not Liverpool versus Real Madrid. Those come to disorganize each other and one wins. Flood doesn't know you exist. But many times we blame our challenges on these things that don't know we exist. There was a drought. So, did it come to slow you down? So those kinds of things do come in. Lalan, I don't want to disrupt your conversation. This first slot was for you to say, what did you hear? Yeah. What did you come to tell us? Yes. Your 5, 6, 7 minutes begin now.
Okay. Alana Kembabazi with the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. What stood out was the focus on natural resources. And we've had this discussion informally a bit with the ministry. Uganda is blessed, incredibly so, and we have internalized that we're a poor country. Besides the oil, the gold, you have these natural resources, the critical minerals. We know that, for example, copper, we had closed our mines, but now with what is happening with renewable energy and the green transition. Copper is increasingly coming up as a very important resource, and cobalt, and we see what's happening in Busoga with the rare earth minerals. So it's very critical and it's very important that these resources are harnessed for the people. We've seen how they transformed economies like Qatar, Norway, Botswana. So the governance around that matters, but also being very intentional and saying that a portion of the natural resources should be going to fund public services like education, health. Because the reality is you want to be able to have a diversified economy. And so to do that, you need to get a portion of these finite but wonderful natural resources, particularly when they're at their peak, and allocate to strengthening your public schools. We've seen countries that have done that. You talked about the limited human capital. So it starts from the basics. Do they have access to good primary education? Do they have access to good secondary education? So that stood out to me, and I really hope that you begin to look at the fiscal rules, limitations around how you allocate those resources. The second one was on the tax exemptions. So he didn't really touch on the tax exemptions, but I want to bring this conversation back. Last year at this time, the PSST promised us, and he had promised us for years, a cost-benefit analysis of tax exemptions in this country. I am yet to see one. I want Commissioner Kagwa to confirm if it has come out. And this is extremely important because every dollar, every shilling foregone in these tax exemptions that are given in ways that are unclear to us is going to mean that there are cuts to education or health or social protection that could be financing this, that could help regular folks, that could finance the roads. You talked about parish model. Without good roads, I come from a district where there are very poor roads, so the bananas are there rotting, the coffee is at poor prices. The tax exemptions, we really must look at that conversation and say, who gets tax exemptions? Why are they getting tax exemptions? Particularly when we need so much money, on what basis are they done? And what are the things the people who are getting tax exemptions are really bringing to our economy? So we really want clarity on when that cost-benefit analysis will come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. Just turn off that microphone so that people don't hear your whisper. The professor said we are whispering about certain things. Well, I'm going to get to you. This conversation is not just about us. I'll be coming back to my panels, but I also need to hear some chewing of the card. 2 weeks ago, I was privileged to get into Ireland. And I remembered about 2010, the global financial crisis. Ireland was one of the countries that had to be bailed out by the Washington institutions. So these consultants from the World Bank are not bad people. Sometimes they bring ideas. Today, Ireland has a surplus. How did they do it? Tax policy, but also focus on where is the low-hanging fruit. How do we industrialize? Ireland is exporting to the US, and I don't think Trump will put sanctions on them, pharmaceuticals. So when we say industrialization, are we zooming in on anything? Or are we just speaking in generalities? They purposed they were going to do the pharmaceutical industry. It speaks to which skill do you develop. Don't just develop skills far. You must have a target. I told you about the Ethiopians. Theirs was about livestock. But they did many other things, of course, they have excelled. So we need to bring down to bear from the generalities, what do I want to see? Everybody thought coffee was about UCDA. It's not. The departure of UCDA has little, if anything, to dent the coffee sector. I can speak with authority as a person who 30 years ago shared the house with the late Kibiri Gesebunya, rest in peace. At that time, he was doing research on clonal coffee. It sits in Kituza. What research? Remember, some of you may remember the coffee wilt disease. They called it Kayovu. Was it Kayovu? The thing had wiped out the coffee, and Chibirige said, this we must address. With the support of USAID, Trump economy again, we were able to bring the coffee back. So the story of coffee today is decades. and it won't be dented. The market is there. These guys still want to drink coffee. They are going to drink coffee because they have no alternatives. But between me and Patrick, we are working out how do we follow that track. Because somebody sitting somewhere, Germany is the world's largest exporter of coffee. Do you want to challenge them? Do you even have knowledge of where to start? But you can't just sit by. But you want to do political talking and legislation. You need to understand that industry and engage them. Somebody wanted to say, why are they bringing money here? He said, man, in September alone, we spent 400, whoever is buying coffee, spent 400 billion buying Ugandan coffee. 400 billion. 40% of that went straight to the farmers. 60% went to who? Now I want to have a conversation there. And again, we are working with the Office of the President, and we are going to have a conversation on this issue on the 17th of December. Do we pull out guns and shoot them? Do you know them? They have drones. They have cyber technology. How do you engage them? But sure that my farmer can't get 60, 40%. The tenfold growth must be felt by the farmer and their peers. We can't just say now the economy is 500 billion and people are still moving half naked and they can't have their meals. So how do we structure growth that is inclusive is the discussion. And this was at the heart of liberalization and privatization. The close of Coffee Marketing Board was about getting better prices and on time to the farmer so that the farmer can do the thing better. And indeed, the farmer got 70% after CMB going away. And they were being paid right on time. So for some of you who think liberalization and privatization were bad things, I need some coffee with you at your expense. Can I see some 2 hands? Now I have seen 3. I've seen 4. So I'll take 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we'll get back to the panel. Be thinking through. Commissioner Kagwa, Director Kagwa, I don't know what titles are out there. The government has been restructuring, but you haven't been restructured. That's the good thing. So you'll sit there. We'll get into you. Take notes. Me and you are taking notes. We are in these policy spaces. Your 2-3 minutes begin now. Don't make them 4.
Thank you, sir. First, I would like to thank NTV and our sponsors for bringing us here together and the panelists. And I would like to agree entirely with one of the panelists, Mr. Patrick Ayota, on capital. And I'll relate it to Professor Sejaka's point. But Professor Sejaka, the root cause of high interest rates is related to your point on administrative costs of the public sector. Whenever they create more districts and more agencies, they have a need to pay new executive directors with new Pajeros and Land Cruisers. And that means that the amount of tax collected is always less than the expenditure. And the government is forced to borrow from the banks. And when they do that, they create a lot of demand for that money to the extent that the price of it goes up. It's as simple as that. Then coming to the issue of tenfold growth, Charlie Munger, the partner of Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, said that if something works, you do more of it. Now, coming to your point, Dr. Muhumuza, the issue of creating tenfold growth is being part of a global value chain. So, for example, if you look at the iPhone, you find that some parts are made in Thailand, some are made in Japan, and the intellectual property is owned in the US. Now, let me relate it to coffee, which has been the mainstay. The reason why coffee has been such a strong sector is because it has a stable global demand. So as you think about the industrialization, you think about the global value chains, and let me bring another example of milk. We've really done well there, but we are always struggling with the market. Now, the only point where I didn't agree with Professor Sejaka is human resources, and human resources. And that's the point I'm going to explain last. Basically, some of the major inventors of economics, like Adam Smith, argued that you need to combine the people with capital to produce something. So for example, we've got Nile breweries here. They've got three things they need to produce something. They need the knowledge, they need the people, and they need the capital. And capital has two parts. It's got the fixed capital, which are the machines, and then they've got the raw materials that they need to use. Now, why capital is so important that if you're in this economy and you're not able to put enough capital to work, then a lot of people become unemployed. So the first disagreement I have with Professor Sejaka is that while productivity is a good measure of growth, in some economies, capital is more needed to open up opportunities for the labor to work before you go into the quality of labor. And that's where Uganda is right now. Now, I have only two questions for the PSST. I know he works very hard. The first one is about the de-investment of umeme. I'm one of those people that did not fully understand, because we are looking for investment to expand. So this company has been around, it's listed on the stock exchange, and we are now de-investing it, so to speak, and taking it back to the government. The last country that did that just for the record, it was Ghana. And Ghana ended up, in some trouble. The second question I have for the PSST is somewhat related to Patrick's point that we cannot grow without savings. And these are the fundamental equations of economics. After GDP, there's a qualifying equation. Investment is equal to savings. Now, every time we come here, I hear a lot about the tax to GDP ratio. Now, is the issue tax policy, or is it tax administration that never gets us to our target? Because as economists, we worry every time we hear about tax, and we don't hear about savings. It goes back to where I agree with Professor Sajaka on the bucket of Winston Churchill. Thank you very much.
Professor Sajaka needs to know your name.
I'm called Baka Mayanja, probably one of his students. Sorry. Sorry about that.
Just proceed. Mine is muted hereafter.
Thank you. My name is Jacqueline Arinda, CEO Jada Coffee Uganda. And my question goes to Mr. Patrick Ayota. And it's a challenge to Mr. Muhumza as well. You said Vietnam is the best example when it comes to coffee. And I can tell you that Vietnam, as we speak, produces 29 million of bags. And it exports 26 million of green bean. And green bean, I mean raw coffee. That's the same what we are exporting. And it only adds value in terms of processed coffee, only 1.4 million. So my question here, before I even ask you, Uganda produces 6.9 million bags, which you earn 1.4 billion. And I've been in engagement, even in boardrooms and meetings, telling them that why don't you support the farmer? So that we move from 6.9 million bags and at least move to 20 million bags before we start spending 40 million bags, $1 million on a soluble coffee plant. And why am I saying that? Economics, I think my teacher in Senior 6 in economics told me that competitive advantage is a very important point. Coffee in Uganda can be produced in any place. Forget about the quality. And we have failed. We are only relying on 1.8 million smallholder farmers, of which these don't even have an acre. If the drought that hit Vietnam, or the first in Brazil, hit Uganda, which produces 55% of the exported coffee, I can tell you would be out of the market. So why isn't the government focusing on supporting the farmer? And by value addition, I think the country, we have failed to define value addition. Value addition is not just processed coffee. Value addition is giving the farmer a tractor. A tractor in Ibanda, where I come from, and Isinjiro, where I got married to, getting a tractor is like accessing Set House. That's how hard it is for a farmer. And in coffee, I can tell you it's capital intensive, that getting hulling machine, pulping machine, quality, even drying coffee. We still have issues of drying coffee. That every farmer, it's us, the private sector, that are supporting the farmer. So my question is, why is it that Uganda feels that it is ready to export processed coffee, even when we know the non-tariff barriers, even when we know that we'll be hit back? And don't forget, we are the private sector who invests in this. If I'm hit back in Europe after investing over 10 million, it's not the government that will suffer, it will be me. So why do we feel that we are ready to export processed coffee, even when we have a low production capacity? Thank you.
Thank you. This conversation is moving. Julius, I'm coming that side. I'm going to finish up some business here. The policy is sometimes, and I like the discussion here, you want to rush to add value. But I've said, can we first capture the other 60% for the current farmer? You want to buy a tractor. The coffee farmer you're talking about, if he's a smallholder, doesn't need a tractor. Because they are likely to be having 2 acres. And one of those acres is coffee. Tractors don't plow where coffee is. So there is another person who wants to deal in tractors, and it would cost government money to buy tractors. I know one who got a tractor and it came without the harrows, which cost him 5 million. He has 200 acres, and within 10 days, the tractor had finished the acres. He said, now what next? None of anybody in his constituency needed a tractor. It's now parked. That's capital sitting on the ground. But as Abubakar said, is it capital? Is it the human resource? The human resource may balance out these things. If you have the wrong policies, you can easily deploy on the wrong ends. So we're picking up some conversations on how do we not just finance, but what do we finance? If you do not have a strategy, your money might end up financing the wrong ends. So before we even finance, what do we want to finance? I'm enjoying the conversation. They gave you a microphone. We agreed we start by our self-introductions.
Thank you very much. My name is Gloria Singwe. I work for Uganda Development Corporation. It's evident that this room is action, action, action. And we could give ourselves examples. For example, in 1960s, we're at the same level as South Korea. And for South Korea to come from where it was to where it is now, there were some structure changes and policy changes that had to be made. Some of them were to aim at export, production, things like public-private investments. And these are things that, if we are actionable, I'll give an example. At UDC, we have seen our investments, over 18 companies have contributed to direct employment, 40,000 jobs, over 120,000 jobs. And we are seeing that annually, going back to how we now contribute to industrialization and the tenfold growth, we have farmers on the ground receiving on an annual basis over 20 billion shillings. And ultimately, when we have such, and Professor Muhumza talked about the grassroots, we can only feel the tenfold growth when money reaches the grassroots. That's how we can be able to actually, and it's evident with industrialization, we shall get there. But let me first talk about maybe other areas, irrespective of, we have, the previous speakers talking about human resource capital. And that's true. But look at how do we support our businesses. Sometimes we have ideas, but then how do we back them for them to be able, how does your idea, align to the total addressable market, and that's the issue of demand now. And then how is it, in terms of technology, technicalities, and how is it financially and economically sustainable? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's industrialize Uganda.
That's one of our sponsors, UDC. Those hands were not worth for a sponsor. Unless you want me to take away the chair where you're sitting, because it is possible that chair is exactly what he sponsored. So thank you very much for appreciating that input. And the economy is very complex. When we came to revive coffee, you may not know that exchange rate liberalization was also about the farmer. An overvalued shilling was costing coffee farmers. Today we have the dollar at around 3.6 something. A few months back in March, the dollar was 3.8 something. So there is a difference of about 130 shillings per dollar. Now for somebody who exported coffee in March and earned $1 million, came and converted at 3.83. And now he's doing exactly the same thing and converting at 3.6, is making a loss of 140 million shillings. Are you seeing the dilemma? So it's not just about coffee and UCDA, the exchange rate matters. So while government put an agricultural credit facility in Bank of Uganda, in the 90s, they put an agricultural policy secretariat in Bank of Uganda. It wasn't about credit. It was about policy. Which policies will speak to the farmer? Because remember, those are the producers. That loss of 140 million is going to be passed on to the farmer, because he is the least in terms of bargaining in that value chain. Will that farmer get motivated? How was UCDA supposed to fix that? So policies do matter, and they can be from all different angles. Sir, your 3 minutes begin now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mhumza. I'm very happy that we are now talking about...
your name will
my
be
name
needed.
is Obey Twinomijuni, and I work with the Uganda Development Corporation. I was indicating that I'm happy that we are talking about two things. One, GDP alongside per capita. Yeah, because in most cases, we normally talk about GDP as a broader issue, and we leave out what an individual as a person earns. In this case, as my colleague has already indicated, we need to look at two things. As government is increasing on the GDP, what are the individuals putting in their pockets? I can give one concept here. If we have to develop, obviously, the issue of import substitution must be one of on our agenda to make sure because an issue here, for example, if you go to the textile industry, we are producing cotton as Ugandans. And only 10% of our cotton, we only add 10% of lint, and we export the 90% of lint. And what do we earn from the 10% that we add value on? We earn about $50 million from that value addition. When we export that lint, which is 90%, we are earning around $30 million. So you can imagine that huge difference. So if government, what I was trying to bring out here, what is the intention of government? Because if you leave it to private sector, it becomes very hard for private sector to move this agenda ahead. So what I was talking about, how can we add value to that lint? If we added value to the lint 100%, how much do we earn? That means we are going to have an increment in our earning. And it is solving many issues. One, you are going to, because if you have manufacturers doing it here, you are going to solve the issue of job creation. Another issue, the farmers are going to get the demand we're talking about for their products, which is cotton. So in my view, I think we need to sit down and evaluate what methods we can use to make sure as we increase, we bridge the gap of export. Because now we are importing over $11 billion here and exporting about 4. So we need to bridge that gap. And in my view, UDC is here to solve that issue because we are supporting private sector. Okay. And lastly, just like the MD and NSSF indicated, we are, I think, doing a lot of funds. I'm looking at the money we are putting in PDM. Because for me, who comes from Kabare, the way you could only support the farmers in Kabare is you bring a factory in Kabare, and my parent who is there can grow Irish, has the demand for that Irish, can supply to that factory and get some money in the pocket. Because if I came to PDM and I get the 1 million, it is more likely that I'm even going to use it for things which may not bring in income. Okay. So what I was trying to highlight here is that UDC, just like acting PSST indicated, that we have been given 1 billion. I think injecting in more money, because we are an investment arm of government, is really the right way to go. Thank you very much.
Fortunately and unfortunately for him, I was in this room for a meeting this week and was discussing about a possible ban on used clothes. And the Economic Policy Research Center came up with very good evidence that I told them, let's make a brief out of this to the president so that he doesn't implement that ban. Let's continue using used clothes, because we realized the incomes. Many times it is easy to create 40,000 jobs, but the Bureau of Statistics is telling me the average per month of those salaries is 150 to 250,000. That is before you remove rent, food, the transport that brings you to work. By the end of the day, a decent Ugandan, and I'm saying a decent, the average, is left with 10,000 shillings for clothing. 10. And this is the household head who has 5 people to dress. So the only way you dress 5 people out of 10,000 shillings, you have to go downtown. The conversation is one. We'll walk water, biri biri. We'll walk water. So out of 10,000, you dress 5 people. It goes back to supply cannot create the demand. We must sustain the growth by making sure incomes of the common people increase. How do we do that is going to be a conversation. Julius, I'll be coming back and end here. I want to pick 2 more people. There are very many now. My panel, please plan with your closing remarks, but it's good to pick them from there.
Thanks.
Let's use as little time as possible.
Sure. I think 3 things, and very quickly. One is that if Mr. Kagwa, if we as a nation want a 10 growth strategy, first is that we need to address the way we do business. And I take it from what NSSF has done. They have realized that they are relying on forced savings. And if I don't have enough money in my pocket, I won't save. So go ahead, encourage people, train them, give them opportunities so they can be able to make money fast and save. And I think that's what this 10 growth should do. To work to put money in our pockets by, for example, ensuring that we stop handouts and create opportunities. Doctor, market is what we need. Farmers will do the rest. The second, for me, is the low-hanging fruit. What are we good at? If I sit with the Japanese on the table, am I going to send him cars? No. I will send him watermelon and coffee. Therefore, I think for me is we need to concentrate on what we are very good at and we are advantageous to do, and then we invest into that. So let's forget about doing all those many things, but address what we are very good at. Lastly, there is no way we are going to achieve this if we have naked people on the street, hungry people on the street, people dying of curable diseases. It just can't be. If we have a loss in a war, let's forget about it. Let's start something else. If we have a loss in, let's concentrate on how we can build our human resource, like Dr. Sekaja said. Thank you so much.
There's a key message in there. How best do you deploy the resources? Because sometimes we are not deploying the right way and are not getting the right results. You have the floor. I'm moving that side, but keep those hands up so that I can keep seeing them. The wave is coming your way.
Thank you very much, NTV, Minister of Finance, for convening us. Robert Chigongo is my name.
Stop thanking them. Just move on. They will thank you actually.
Okay. To Mr. Kagwa, we have spoken a lot of things, and also the theme is very interesting. But URA collects our hard-earned money, and then you see a headline, Daily Monitor, 60 billion in 60 seconds, rooted or plundered. Now this is an issue of systems integrity. What are you doing about strengthening system integrity? The second one is about gaps in planning. Once you have erroneous data, that means you lack information integrity and data integrity. We all saw the statistics released by UBOS and the slight errors, we may call them slight errors, but those were gross errors. They indicate lack of data integrity. If we are to achieve the theme as stated, I think we need to work on data integrity and systems integrity. And you know the gaps in systems integrity. Money routed through procurement, all that you know. So what are you doing about it? Then last one, World Trade Organization released a report of the biggest exporters. And no African country is actually among. It's a shame. Even Thailand, as it is with its common trade, which is known, many's happiness, it is better than our African countries. And we oftentimes claim that we are an agricultural country. What are we exporting? We have outlined coffee, so on and so forth. But if it can't move us to that status, what else can we do? Okay. Countries depend on nuclear farming, not subsistence farming. What are you doing out to support nuclear farmers? It's only through nuclear farming that we can achieve massive exports. So what plans are in place?
Thank you. She has the microphone here. Keep moving that side.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Grace Mkwaya from Platform for Labor Action, and my comment is on the labor force lacking relevant skills. I would say we have, as Ugandans, a lot of skilling is being done, but what is lacking is investing to ensure the people we have we always jump on exporting labor and not investing in what we have, because people are already being trained by they use. Actually, all of you are teachers. Professor Sejaka, you are
Professor Sejaka is the main trainer here.
Even you, Dr. Frederick, you're also a trainer. But do you mean those skills have not translated into what it is? Because it's true to an extent, because for instance, if you looked at just plumbers in Uganda, majority of them we have learnt Joakali or from other people. They haven't been trained, whereas a lot of investment is put into education. But where does it end? Because in most cases we are reactive to the problems we have. When you look at, for instance, looking at our UPE, what are the actual issues of why UPE is not producing? Those are the things I thought we would also look at if we want to get to this financing growing at tenfold. Also, another issue I wanted to go to is to our LSSF funding.
Last one.
I'll stop there, yes. In terms of, you've already alluded at governance challenges. When you look at the Entebbe Express Highway, the payment structure for the Chinese was done because this was foreign money. What will happen when it's local sourcing? How will we ensure the safety of our savings? If it's used for the Jinja-Kampala Express Highway, we need to hear those assurances, because with the spending and everything, we are scared. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm even thinking, and I'm working with the Ministry of Works friends. I'm reading their notes. There's what they call choke points to the whole road network. Who needs to go to Jinja in an expressway? What are you going to do there? Why should I think 600, 800 billion for you to get to Jinja in an expressway? To play golf? That you can go and spend nights there. Golf takes time to play. So I'm identifying all the choke points, the likes of Karuma, that are headed our way in the next 10 to 15 years. If I get the 800 billion, I would rather go for those. Where are they? Sezibwa has been closed for big trucks now for 2 years. That's a choke point. You can't grow the economy tenfold when some of those bridges are bothering us. Thank God now Mabira is closed off one lane. You are being advised to use Katosi or Sezibwa, but Sezibwa already the big trucks are not there. So these are some of the things we need to be looking at. It's nice to go to places in an expressway. It's nice to also deliver to go everywhere. This economy is everywhere. So we might rethink. Patrick, I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about the planning for tenfold growth. What should the money be going to speak to? We still want an integrated road network. And we are doing that assessment on all the roads. Hopefully we'll come up with the next investment for 10 years in the road infrastructure alone. And I'm not just talking about highways, we're also talking about feeder roads. That is going to come a nightmare for our growth unless we work it out nicely. You have the microphone. Where is the other microphone? After there it will go to, okay, then it will go to my sister there, and then I will close off. So there are two gentlemen with a microphone apart from the one standing, and then it will go to my sister, and you bring back my microphones. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
2 minutes each of us.
Okay, tourism is our second.
Your name?
Stephen Chikule. I work with NSSF. Tourism is our second forex earner, and of course Jinja is a hot spot for it, so the road will come in handy. But my main issue is on extractives. We've addressed many of the others, but from what the Commissioner said, one of our major strategies revolves around these extractives. And for me, my concern is we had a lot of excitement about the oil, and even before we had any oil coming out of the ground, we knew exactly how the revenue is going to be managed. We knew what the private capital is going to take as cost oil. We knew what's going to happen to the government's share of the profit oil. We even have an investment advisory committee for that. At least someone is thinking about the rest of the people when it comes to a shared resource. Because if you discover this on my land, it will no longer be my oil, it's government oil, and it becomes a shared resource. My concern is we already have our #1 forex earners gold. What's the plan for this gold?
It's not our gold, so think wisely.
Okay.
What we are earning, that's the good thing.
I don't have that information, but the reports show that our #1 forex earner is gold. And we have plans of mapping many more minerals that will become shared resources. Do you have something similar to what they've planned for oil? What happens? Who takes the money when this is extracted? As she said, how does the common man, whose GDP per capita we want to increase, benefit from these shared resources? Thank you.
A good conversation, ATMs, the aim is mining, and gold is big money. The reason I'm emphasizing 3 billion of exports, #1 export earner is gold. We haven't even put our own gold in that space, and we have it. So this can give us the 10-fold growth in 7 years, leave alone 15. The conversation is ongoing. The company, mining company, is supposed to come on. Yes, sir.
Thank you, moderator, and the panelists for an excellent conversation. My name is Collins Apuoyo. I'm an agricultural economist, and I work with farmers in the villages of Uganda. One thing that I think is being scattered around here is really what is the foundation of a strong economic growth. And I go back to what I hear from countries that have actually achieved rapid growth. And 4 things come through regularly. The first one is the ability of a country to prioritize. Picking priorities that will make you grow and capture value. The second one is the ability of a country to block or seal leakages. However hard you tax people, however hard you earn foreign exchange, if there is leakage, your growth is a pipe dream. The third thing that I've heard being talked about in these countries is efficiency. If you invest $1, how much do you get out of that dollar? Then the fourth one that they talk about is accountability. If you hold any position in a country, are you accountable for what you are given resources to do? I think these are things that we can talk about, how much oil we have, how much coffee we export, but these are critical to our tenfold growth. Then lastly, I just want to add this, because it is becoming the future. We know what is currently going on in the coffee sector in this country. Countries who are importing Ugandan coffee are putting conditions, EUDR, we are aware of this. Now, if we are thinking of tenfold growth into the future, those conditions will come not only in coffee, they'll come into manufacturing, they'll come into other aspects of that growth. And unless we have a forward planning to address those issues that will make us not be competitive globally, then our growth must think differently. We must either look at growth that is regional, which I think will not take us to tenfold.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Apoy Mate. Isn't that the name? I'm very close to it. The software issues, the politics comes in. I know these guys will still drink our coffee. Where are they going to find the coffee? They are going to keep extending those things of, was this coffee grown where there was a muvule tree? What else is there? There's no artificial coffee. Sometimes but something you can't ignore. that global politics and global decisions can hinder our growth. Manufacture.
Thank you very much, Alan Senyondwa here from Uganda Manufacturers Association. I would like to focus a little bit on this thing here called tenfold growth vis-a-vis financing. And I like statistics, so I'll use them. The tax growth rate was 20.1. Financial year 22, 23, 23, 24. So the tax collection grew by 20. The imports grew by 19. The exchange rate is far outpacing, apart from the last few months. The interest rates are above 18 to 20%. The expenditure budget of Uganda grew by 36%, while the industrial growth grew by 7%. Agriculture grew by 5%. I can go on and on and on and on. When we talk about tenfold growth, and I will use the simple economics, savings is equal to investment. If we can't bring in more than we expend, we can close the tenfold growth agenda and go into other things. If we cannot finance the growth, we can as well go to sleep and forget about the tenfold growth. What am I saying? We can throw all the rubbish we want and all the points at the PSST. The fact remains simple. If out of your 30 trillion you are collecting, if not even 1 trillion is going into production, but rather going into social justice and let's share the cake and let's do this, we are wasting precious time. The answer to tenfold growth is simple. Production, production, and more production. So, and that goes with the second thing, productivity. And that is where the focus should be. So the PSST has put through pointers of where we can focus and get the money. I want to believe that the GDP on education, on financing, I think we have it in their room. Over 70% of what we should do is seated here. And therefore, the answer is, let's stop talking and start doing what we are supposed to do, because we have the answers. We have been given the answers by the PSST, Mr. Iota, Professor Sejaka. The answers are already here. Simple. Put your money where your mouth is. Start investing. Focus on the areas which will lead us to grow. If it is coffee, so be it. Put money there. If it's production, put money there. We have a saying back where I come from. There is no foreigner going to put money in your country for you to industrialize. Ask me why. Where do you want them to sell their products? If they give you the money to industrialize, where do you want them to put their money for industry, for their products? So no one is going to give you money to industrialize. No one is going to give you money for production. You yourselves must look for your own money to produce. So let us support NSSF there. Put more money in there. Please, NSSF, invest in production.
Okay.
Thank you.
And remember, you might even find your money, you industrialize, they will put tariffs, don't come to our markets. Trumponomics is with us. It takes a lot of diplomacy as well, a little bit of it. The Ukrainians are in South Korea because the North Koreans are in Russia. I don't know whether that's about manufacturing or agriculture, but those spaces are in our midst. So I felt so happy, and I want to read the notes when I heard the CDF is in Japan. Jane, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jane Amugeokelo. I'm the Operations Director at the Huru Institute, where we work with cooperatives. And so I have two comments. Recently, I was working with cooperatives in Buyende and Kamuli, and I needed to work with local government staff. I always reached at 9 when the appointment time would be. And in several cases, these guys showed up in office at 11 a.m. midday. So when we talk about productivity and efficiency, how are we going to expect industrialization and all that we are aspiring for to happen when the local person, the farmer, the industrialist, whoever it is who needs to be supported by a commercial office or a cow's office sits there not knowing whether this person will show up or not? So I was lucky to meet my niece who works in Kamuli. So she works with the RSP, and I asked, is this how business runs here? She said, you're even lucky if you found them. Sometimes they come to office twice a week. So guys, I mean, if everybody is relying on food from upcountry, you know, a lot is happening in the rural areas that feeds into the city. And this is a level of efficiency in our local governments. I think we need to collectively, I don't know how, to ensure that we have efficient government structures. Otherwise, we could talk until the cows don't come. My next point is cooperatives. We have a big governance issue. You know, there is all this theft. Just the other day we were writing in our publication, the Cooperator magazine, how 28 billion had been stolen from Mtunga Dairy Union. And I was thinking, what sort of mechanism, corporate governance mechanism, could get us more efficiency with this sector that, you know, we are promoting? One of the things that came to mind is, how do we encourage an alternative capital market for cooperatives? With the view that if we have cooperatives listed on an alternative market that is restricted just for cooperative trading because of the principles and values of cooperatives, we would encourage more transparency, because they would have to have prospectus, they would have to show us their corporate governance structures and mechanisms, and would mobilize capital. I think someone talked of capital, you know, being mobilized, so that we stop stretching our hands only to government or NGOs, you know, to provide financing. So I would be very willing to participate in that conversation with government and see how to, you know, to get this alternative capital market for cooperatives thriving and us mobilizing capital. Thank you.
Jane, you might want to sit on the chair next to Kagwa, but now he's still taking his notes. But we have some after here. Government is in the house, and government is listening in. Oh, now you are there.
Yes, please.
I had said the microphones come back, but you already have it.
I will bring it back.
Please don't give microphones to any other.
Thank you, Doctor. And I will be very quick at it. I'm also going back to our theme tonight, opportunities to financing the tenfold growth. I'm Daniel Bawanerirwe. I'm the Executive Director of Bana Consult. We deal in 3 C's of credit: credit connection, credit correction, and credit correction. Now, in our dealing with the public, we actually find, even if you don't go back to government, we shall talk about government, it will take it about 50 years to reform. I don't want to really to give you false hope. So, but what are the opportunities that we have that we can tap immediately we get out of this room. We are looking at the SMEs which are providing 80% of employment. Someone talked about employment. That's when you are having the real facts. Then we are talking about the available financing options in the market, which almost 99% of the people trading and doing other things are using mismatched credit facilities in the market. So addressing actually only that gets us solving more than 50% of the problem before we go ahead. So you flip it and see. If you could refinance, and because when you are looking at the consulting in correcting people's bad debt, you actually find the biggest fact is about mismatch. And having taken, because I'm a retired banker, I was at Barclays with Mr. Ayota. So, and I was heading credit. So when you look at what people ask for, you actually almost feel like crying for them. But as you talked about people lining at UDB, actually commercial banks are right now lining at the business premises to sell them the products the clients want, but not necessarily what they need. We need to have that big conversation. Even if government doesn't reform, if you address only that, about 50% of the challenge goes away. Only bullet points on the other. What we are looking also is a big mismatch between the PDM and Buy Uganda, Build Uganda policy, which could actually peak into a pyramid of quality and export. But right now what we are having, it's like we are doing in silos. PDM is a very good concept, but if we tied the knot at the end and create it into a production, marketing, quality, pyramid, side by the ordinary quality remains within us here. That supplies for Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. Then the highest quality of those is for export. Now this ties into another opportunity I don't hear anybody talking about so much here. We are into the biggest opportunity of the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. Now that is where we could compete more, and I've been on quite a number of engagements on the continent. Actually Uganda we are missing. You look for a Ugandan, actually you can't see. And the civil service, the last one. 1 second. Our civil service, that's why I'm not giving you Forest Hope. The civil service, PSST, if you could change only one thing, there are many things to talk about it. The civil service we inherited, I think it has only that mentality of catching someone doing something wrong, not help someone doing something right. That's where I end. Thank you.
We inherited it from whom? The ones we inherited.
My minute ended, so
the ones we inherited from the colonialists have all retired. This one is ours. Please bring the microphones here, and I want to submit and end. I will sort out myself with the Okellos, because I know how to do it. Microphone here, please. Right on this table where the managing director is seated, or else he will leave us with the invoices. These are good conversations, by the way, and I think what Jane raises is not just about work skilling, but also work ethics. What ethics do people have? You two guys wind it up, and then we'll get back to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. I must say I'm very, very, very happy today because I've heard only the correct things. I'm very happy with the Minister of Finance for coming up with these opportunities for financing the tenfold growth for this country. It is possible, it is doable. We have always felt that we as a country, we as Ugandans, we are punching well below our capacity. Now, the question for everybody here is that, how do we do this? you need the tools to unlock the opportunities. These tools reside within the capital markets industry. For a long time, we have just been watched. The little steps we have made, the little achievements we have made, people have been thinking that they are one-off and they are not replicable, and so on and so forth. But I want to assure the Minister of Finance, at this stage, since it is you who have come up with these opportunities for 10-fold growth, invite us from the capital markets industry so that we can interface, we look at the tools from the capital markets industry which can generate and unlock the financing for this 10-fold growth on a timeline, on a credible timeline. We normally do this, and other countries have done this, within 2 cycles of 5 years of planned growth. Because for investment, you need timelines. 2 cycles of planned growth are adequate. What does it mean? What shall it involve? It will involve unpacking the NDP series. It will involve unpacking the PPP framework. It will involve, now let me explain. For example, the NDP is a plan. Now, as finance people, we don't invest in plans. We invest in investment-grade strategies. Now, this is our contribution from the capital markets industry. We shall unpack the NDP and unlock and pick out the early or low-hanging deliverables within it, which can trigger the 10-fold growth. Now, 10-fold growth, people should not be scared. There was a number which was thrown here, that you need to grow by 16% per annum in order to achieve this 10-fold growth. No, the minimum is 8 points. The minimum 8 points year on year for 2 cycles of 5 years. You can go above that, but don't fall below the 8 points. Uganda can do double-digit growth very easy, very, very easy. Finally, this will require, I want to give an example of the instruments which we have in the capital markets industry, and my colleague here will probably add on to it. We need to have a bond market development program with the Minister of Finance. The bond market is key to this 10-fold growth. It underpins the equity, because the pricing for shares and equities and so on are derived from the pricing in the bond market. We have demonstrated in the capital markets industry, we have demonstrated that Ugandans are only waiting for investment-grade products to save, to unlock their savings. And I'm sure Mr. Yota has found this out. It's not true that Ugandans have poor savings culture. What they don't have are instruments to put their money in. Now, this is what the capital markets industry can come up with, the instruments which will allow Ugandans to save. So the bond market is very, very key. And we need to get this conversation going very, very quickly. And then the bond market is driven by a domestic savings program. We should not, the dispensation for savings which we have right now is very hostile to savings. And when we sit down, when the PS invites us from the capital markets industries, we shall demonstrate, but we shall go beyond that. We shall offer solutions on how we can get this done. Thank you so much. I want to reiterate my my extreme happiness on this, because at my age, I would like to see my grandchildren enjoying this tenfold growth, which is possible. Thank you so much.
And just to add, as you're coming in, we were with Jeff on the very first summit. So when he speaks, we've been on this journey. But I also wanted to talk to Alan, gave us numbers, and Jeff is here talking about his grandchildren. While they were talking, in between them, they took about 8 minutes. And in those 8 minutes, 16 children were born within the borders of Uganda. We have 2 children per minute. Don't forget that as we're trying to grow tenfold, we have some excess baggage, but the bazukuru are needed. How do we plan for them, even as they come in? Those are realities we have to live with, and we have to plan them. 0 to 17 years are 50.1% of our population. 0 to 17 don't work. They eat, they go to school, they play, they fall sick, they need to be dressed. We walk at a biri. That's where we are. And if the average income is 200,000 for employees, we have a problem. We have a problem. Don't forget those facts as we plan to finance the tenfold growth. You are the last on the floor.
Thank you very much, Fred. On a lighter note, I think we need to congratulate you for growing with this summit. You were here day 1, now we are here 8. I don't know what is the average growth rate.
Thank you. I'm working on a transition. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. So on a serious note, let me thank NTV and the Minister of Finance for bringing us together annually to discuss these topical issues. Because of time, I'll quickly summarize my points. One is it's correct that in the medium term, we'll see growth, which will accelerate on a number of things which the PS has pointed out, more especially on account of oil and extractives. Tenfold growth. Very many moving parts. Greater ambition, but too many moving parts. And like we gather this afternoon, a lot of structural rigidities that must be overcome. I want to quickly point out the key catalysts that Moses pointed out. There are 4, maybe more, but I jotted down 4. Agro-industry, tourism, extractives, science, technology, and innovation. Now, when you look at these key areas, are they actually aligned to the budget? Are they properly funded? Because if they are not properly funded, you may not be able to derive the full potential. For example, tourism. We're still at 2 million visitors a year. In the budget priority areas, where does it fall? Tourism, agro, industry, these are priorities that must be given priority in the budget. If they are not fully funded, then it may not be as possible to quickly move to this tenfold growth. What are the risks to this great ambition? I think I can pick on a few. One, I have not had very much discussion around climate change risk. I'm not so sure, because really 2/3 of our jobs are on account of agriculture sector, which is very prone to natural disasters, and these are severe and rampant. Today, my colleague here was telling me in Pakwach he cannot go home. He'll take a ferry. So he can't even get his fish for next weekend. The supply is constrained. Now, if we still have natural disasters that cannot be managed, what are the mitigants in terms of climate change risk? There's a lot of talk, a lot of debate, but what is the framework that underpins this? It can be very disruptive to the agriculture production that we are talking about this afternoon. Cost of doing business. Some talked about high interest rates, suffocating credit availability in the marketplace, high taxes, URA is all over the place. How are we stimulating the private sector if we continue accumulating private sector areas, which I stand to be corrected, standing to in excess of about 7 trillion, and no deliberate plan to reduce those. 200 billion is just a drop in the ocean, which was provided for in the budget. High government spending has been talked about. High debt levels has been mentioned. But how do we deal with these risks? On the risk, the last point on the risk is really the framework around the oil production. Oil production will double our GDP. Expectation is that we'll be earning at least $2 billion per annum. Now, what is the framework in terms of guarding against lack of competitiveness when these flows start coming? And also guarding against real appreciation of the currency. We need to understand that as we carry on with this debate. Let me quickly go to the other interesting word, financing. How do we finance this growth? We need strategic approach in terms of raising capital. We've been more focused on traditional ways of funding, but there's need to call for a holistic approach. And look at the full range, domestic, public, private, international capital, that can be able to build a high impact pipeline of projects that can advance our development goals. Now, I'll suggest 3 areas. One of them Moses talked about, which is corporate bond, the corporate bond market. We have been very much silent on creation of a regional bond market, regional sovereign bond market. Now, we need to respond to these needs. Now, can we leverage on the ESC framework to be able to have a large size bond market? Because our markets have remained small and they will not grow. They will remain as small, and we may not be able to generate a large amount of funds if we want to do this. So can we ride on the back of ESC and perhaps collectively, with the full faith of 5 or 6 governments, be able to issue instruments? It will involve a lot of work and a lot of coordination, but it's doable. The second one is diaspora bond. Can we pick on an example of Ethiopia, which has really leveraged on the diaspora, Ethiopians that live abroad, to issue instruments, bonds, to finance infrastructure? If you see the infrastructure development in Ethiopia, you'll be amazed. But it has been carefully structured through securitizing these remittances that come. With ODA and FDI declining, we need alternatives. There is actually a study that has revealed that we can be able to potentially raise $17 billion US dollars in sub-Saharan Africa if we focused on diaspora bonds. Corporate bonds, Moses has talked about, but let me talk about another interesting one as I conclude: blended finance. Blended finance is basically de-risking government projects, and this appeals, I think, to my colleague Patrick here. Blended finance is to de-risk, leverage private investment. We are used to hearing Minister of Finance, with all due respect, Moses, bailouts targeted to certain sectors in the economy. I don't know what is the criteria for those who are financed, but we can eliminate that direct finance from the budget by making these private projects attractive to private capital that comes. And by doing that, we are actually de-risking and giving incentives to these private companies to be able to attract private capital through support like guarantees of government, other incentives, and make those projects very, very, very active. It can work, but it needs a proper framework. Then the other issue really is financial markets. We need to understand and acknowledge that financial markets is a very integral part in this process if we are going to achieve this tenfold. So let's have our ducks in the row. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you very much. A number of things emerging here. I'm still having my conversations with colleagues in planning spaces. Let's use the word GDP minimally. Let's get to the word GNP. GNP, for those of us who may not know, is gross national income. And it is more superior and more realistic than gross domestic product, because gross domestic product will capture what the FDI come and make here and take at home, and you can't stop them taking their money. But when you go to gross national income, you're also now beginning to say, how do I tap other people's economies? Make money from there and bring it here. And we know very well our remittances now are above $1 billion. So what if we doubled that or quadrupled it? We would get $3 billion coming in from those Ugandans in the diaspora, and that feeds into the diaspora bond. So you'd be able to grow it up. So while we prepare our young people, I keep telling my students, please learn Arabic, because the opportunity is there. Arabic is not a religion, it's a language. And it's right now sailing, right? It's like learning French. I think learning Arabic is now more profitable than learning French. Sorry for my French colleagues. But these are issues. How do you bring in foreign investors here, but also how do you prepare your own people to go and invest abroad and bring the money home? So we can broaden that space and that conversation and be able to bring in the monies that we need, but also the specific investments that are needed. We are done with the floor. Thank you very much for your submissions. I appreciate. We wish we could have had more time to have the conversations. Your views are being captured. There is a whole team of mine from the Makerere University Business School Economic Forum seated over there. Please wave for recognition, my team. And they are picking up quite a lot of this information. We were supposed to generate a report out of this, which we shall share. But we are back here on Wednesday, again by invitation, to discuss capital market issues. I don't know whether you have received your invitations. We want to come here and have that conversation. It's also part of the tenfold growth. Now, where do I begin? Alana, you go first. You are the farthest. You might run away from me if I don't pick you first.
Fantastic. I want to underscore, first of all, we have to curb the leakages. Someone did say that. So curbing illicit financial flows. You asked about gold. There were taxes that are not even levied on gold. It was a huge bit if you look at the OAG report. And so I think we need to be very intentional about making sure every bit of drop stays in the bucket as you collect more. And then I would add just investing really in public education and health. Education capitation grants at 12,000 shillings per child per year. So what is the standard of schooling in the public schools, and how does that affect the infrastructure question? And finally, on natural resources, there is a lot that has to be done that we need to see you do, and I encourage you to engage the different stakeholders to make sure that you are curbing the leakages, that you are addressing the issues around how revenue can be best allocated to have more inclusive growth for all.
Interesting conversations. I have raised the storm here, but with the people in Jinja. But as a Mnyoro, the people in Jinja are born by Banyoro, so we will sort that out there. But talking about going to Jinja and tourism, you don't want to rush to Jinja and miss what is in between. When I went to Cairo, the business that was on the River Nile at night. So I really want boats to begin from Port Bell and Gaba, so that you can spend a whole day going to Jinja on a boat if you're a tourist. The rest of you can rush there. I don't know to do what. That's your business. But linking Jinja and tourism, I want to see the vessels on the water. By the time they get to the other side, I can assure you they will have eaten 100 goats. That is more money for the people in Noya, who may not be on the River Nile and on the Lake Victoria. So there are so many things. Let's do the road, let's do the bridge, let's do, I don't know, the railway, let's do it. But tourism, can we be specific on what investments do we need for each of the ATMs? Prof, there were barbs thrown at you. You don't have to answer them, but if you must, as a prof, you may want to do so. You mark exams.
Thank you very much. Being a professor, I live in the world of criticism. And if there is no criticism, then I get very annoyed with the people I'm with. I thrive on disagreement. And the only person who seems to have disagreed with me is Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, I'll tell you a story. That when people start telling stories, you know their age. One day I traveled with my son to South Africa. And we saw very good roads and very organized buildings. And he said to me, Daddy, don't big people from Uganda come here to see these things? I had no answer. So when you said to me that you disagree on the issue of human resources, I am left at a loss. The most efficient economies, the economies that have developed, have not developed because of resources, of capital. They have developed because of their human what? Resources. And I don't know what else I can add to that argument. Capital, I mean, all the other forms of factors of production are important. But today, we all do agree that if the quality of your human capital is poor, the rest doesn't matter. And we say Uganda is gifted by nature. We have a joke. You know, I also go in the local places and we have a joke. And we say, water is life. But we have a lot of water. Okay? So we can debate that till the cows come home. But for me, I really have come to believe unless you fix the issue of human capital quality, all these nice things that we want will not happen. The other thing I want to disagree with is you. You said that you want the exchange rate to be appreciating, or rather depreciating in terms of the shilling. And for me, I have a problem with that. Because I do believe, I come from the school that believes that what you need in as far as an exchange rate is concerned is stability. And for me here, when you said that, I was thinking about the dirham. You remember your example of the guy who exported $1 million of coffee, and then the price of the dollar vis-a-vis the shilling has fallen? The issue is not the exact exchange rate. The issue is whether you are going to have the same exchange rate over 10 years. For me, that's how I see it. And the best example is the dirham. I don't know when you started going to Dubai. If you still go there, it is the same thing. So what we need in terms of planning over the next 10 years or whatever is we must say that as we make a plan, we know that in 10 years from now, the dollar will still be 3,650. But if it is going to be 4,000 or 2,000, that is where the problem comes from. Because that means risk. That means volatility. So that is the only other point I think I wanted to comment on. Lastly, Collins, that was a very beautiful presentation. I have copied it, and like the Japanese, I'm going to make it better. You had 4 things: prioritization, seeding leakages, efficiency, and accountability. That was very beautiful. Thank you so much.
And my team has taken note. We live in the world of criticism. Academic is the only best space. There are no enemies there.
No.
Any contradiction is a welcome conversation. I always say stability of the exchange rate is critical. And people took it to the extreme and used to have a fixed exchange rate so that it doesn't change. And when we liberalized that market, it was actually to say at what point should it be matters even more. A plane that is stable at 10,000 feet, when it's a jumbo jet going to London, you want to jump out of it in a parachute. It has stabilized at a very low level. So the conversation we are going to have with Prof, and I'm having with my colleagues, and Bank of Uganda is in the house, at what point should we stabilize it? The 3.6 is unsustainable.
Very quickly, Fred, I don't care whether the dollar is $1 to 10,000 shillings or $1 to 3,000 shillings. The moment you get at the rate which you think is the most ideal, for planning purposes, yes, please stay stable.
That's okay, and that's why I'm saying 3.6 is too low. Where should it be is a conversation we're going to have, because the real effective exchange rate, this is the economics we're not going to get into, but it is working against our competitiveness globally. That's what we have observed in the realities. It's causing us to import more and export less. Because as I said, the coffee farmer, if you're going to lose 140 million for every $1 million, how much have the farmers lost out of the 1.4 billion they had last time? That is money that should have gone to the farmers. If it can get there at even a better rate, I don't need PDM, Pillar 3. I would move it into infrastructure to still support the same farmer. But that's a conversation we'll do, and we are doing that, and we'll be trying to find out those issues. Patrick, we want to increase those savings. We want to increase the investments. My money sits with Patrick. I'm officially and legally allowed to go and pick it, because I'm past the age. But Patrick is doing me a good job, eh? So I've so far left it with him. Don't tell them what you are doing to me, but tell us what you are doing to us.
Actually, I'm going to, we lament a lot as Ugandans. Eh? We raise questions and it's our country. The good news is when NSSF does an initiative, we do it on behalf of you members, because the fund belongs to you. So let me share with you what we are doing collectively as Ugandans through NSSF. And I will start by a very interesting thing. Dr. Muhumuza, you joined 79,000 Ugandans who are eligible to take their money as of the end of June 2024, holding slightly over 1 trillion shillings. They've left it in the fund. The number before that in June 2023, that number was 67,000. The total holding was around 780 billion shillings. It points out something to what, Grace, you're concerned. Many times I tell guys, not all Ugandan institutions are not working. Not all Ugandans are stealing. You have in NSF an institution that actually other countries are coming to benchmark against, and we can build this country together. The reason why I raise that is really important that we take a bit of a belief in our own country. We look at too many things. I tell people there are two things that cause dust in this world. Two things. Decay will cause dust. Guess what? Reconstruction will cause dust. So when you see the dust and you're driving on that road, on Mubende Road, ask yourself, what is causing that dust? Is it decay or reconstruction? So when you look at things around you, even the political struggles we're having as a country, we're trying to figure out political way, is it reconstruction or decay? And I'm going to tell you something, as a young growing economy, most of it is reconstruction. Yeah, we are struggling with certain things, but there are certain things that come out that surprises us. When driving license was transferred from Face Technology to Ministry of Works, we all thought that, oh my goodness, what has happened? You can know how many of you have gone for your driving license and you're surprised the speed, the efficiency with which you are getting it. That's a government entity. Even passports. So what's my point? Yes, we are struggling, but there are little things that we need to think through and know that's working. Let me give you a statistic, almost, and you're going to be happy about this. Because we invest in the bond market, exchange rates are very important to the fund. So I just did a little bit of an analysis. 5 years, the month ending October 31st. I was in Dubai. So I wanted to know how the exchange rate performed from 2019, September 2019, 30th 2019 to October 31st, 2024. When you look at the Uganda exchange rate against the dollar, and because we're a net importer, the dollar is very important. That exchange is very important. And because it's freely exchanging, there are no controls. It does reflect the state of the economy. Guess what we found out? Between September 1, 2019 and October 31st, 2024, the shilling actually appreciated against the dollar by 1.17%. I went back and did that in the last 5 years, coming there before. The shilling had depreciated against the dollar between 0.7%. In other words, when you look at the long term, the shilling has been stable. I compared it to Nigerian naira. Same period. The naira depreciated by 300%. Compared to the Egyptian pound, the pound depreciated by 200%. South African rand depreciated by 18%. Kenya currency depreciated by 28%. In this region, the only currency that held, that has no exchange controls over that long time period, was the Uganda shillings. So yes, you can see a lot of things, but sometimes we miss those things that we want to see. So what are we doing? The only thing I'm going to say, Mr. Onegobel and then Mr. Kaboyo. I looked at the 10-year yield on government bonds. It's 16%. Our neighbors, I looked at it right now, 16%. The safest security you can buy in investment is a government bond. Why does the Uganda government, why is it willing to borrow at 60%? Why is the Kenya government willing to borrow at 60%? Because if we don't address what makes that expensive, why the heck would I put money in a private company that is dangerous and miss out on the government bond that's safest? Even you as members, you're going to kill me. This party, you're so stupid. How could you do that? So if you want to remove the crowd out effect, these efficiencies weren't built with the government, need to be. So the rates in the government do not crowd out investments in other sectors. Finally, I think, Jacqueline, I'm going to tell you a story. You talked about coffee. We followed the coffee. Mr. Kagwa is very modest. We began to think about this thing about what are we going to do about, can we do something on behalf of Ugandans about this thing about markets? So for the last 9 months, and Mr. Kagwa chaired some of the meetings between UDC, Minister of Finance, Stephen is actually the point person for us in NSF. So we're creating an entity composed of the NSF, UDC, private players to actually address this thing about the markets. Can we organize and try to do this market? So I'm going to come to you about coffee. Every day, your coffee farm, UCDA sends out a note to the coffee farmers. The price of coffee last day was $4.50. I'm giving an example. They get it faithfully. So the farmer has this view, this is how much the coffee was in the global market. I want them the agent. The agent goes to the farmer and says, you know what? $4.50. I'll give you 3. Me, I'll keep $1.50 because I have to aggregate it, put it together, take it to Mombasa. And the farmer is happy. Me, I've kept 3. The farmer has taken, the agent has taken $1.50. We followed that coffee to Mombasa. In May 2024, delivered to the 4 players in Mombasa, Dutch company, French company, German company, Italian company. They gave the agent $6 a kilo. No problem. The guy took the risk. So the farmer kept 3, the agent kept 3. Then we followed that coffee. June went to Morocco, followed our coffee to Morocco. They reconciled the coffee from Mombasa to Morocco. French company. 2 companies that are buying our coffee in Morocco. one's called Duomo. We found there our bags still label Uganda Natural Robusta Coffee. And by this, it commands a premium in the Arab world, better than Arabica. Paid $12 a kilo. From 6, from Mombasa. No value add. So far, no value add.
Apart from moving it from point A to point B.
First value add, Duomo roasted coffee. Packages it in 1 kilogram bags. They also have got cafes in Rabat and Casablanca. They supplied. Then they supplied that 1 kilogram bag to their supermarkets. Wholesale price, $23. Okay, that? We followed the other one. The other one actually processes coffee. Out of it, they produce 81 coffee products. Lemon flavored coffee, passion flavored coffee, you name it, 81. The value of the coffee, when they're done with it, $55. So this is what we told the Moroccans. Now listen to why it's important for us to take it back. Say, why are you paying $12 from Mombasa? Why don't you come and we'll deliver it to you directly in Mombasa at $11? Morocco say, really? In fact, that's what this entity is. So that we're waiting for them to go through. So they can bring the $11 and we pay it, deliver it in Mombasa. I still give the farmer the $3. I still give the agent the $6, but now I've made $5. I can now come back to the farmer and give him $2. Now this is why my selfishness as NSF becomes apparent. So I give the farmer the $2. He now makes $5. But I say, I'll give you $4.50. Now you have $4.50. Take the 50 cents and open up a savings account with NSSF for your retirement. And we begin to build that. But suppose we had that coffee soluble in Uganda. So what we export out of Uganda is cappuccino, mocha, and not green seeds. The $55 stays here. Now you can even give that farmer $10. And that's why we have to bring it back here, so that we can actually export it. And it works, especially, now this is where you laugh, especially if the person building the coffee processing plant is the off-taker. He is the one, the market for that coffee. And we do that and we change the way coffee is done in this country. By the way, you take that on every crop, soybean, wheat, whatever it is, and we can change this country, because a farmer with 800 kgs of soybean, selling it for 1,500 shillings now, he's making 1.2 million shillings an acre. I have an interest right now for 2,500 shillings a kilo. Put fertilizers, you now get 3,000 kilos of soybean. That farmer just moved from making 1.2 to 6 million shillings an acre. 3 times growth. If 1 million of our farmers are involved in something like that, why can't we get the 10-fold growth without borrowing money, but bring the market to them? So that's what we're trying to do on your behalf, so we don't lament that it's hopeless. It's not. Thank you.
And for me, when my money is with him, I sleep, because he's making money for me, even before I retire. If there were so many of these, and I think this is where Jeff comes in, investment grade projects will attract the money. The money is around. How do we get it there? Moses Kagwa is going to come and give us his final take, but I want to relieve my panel. Please, a round of applause for them. And we have a cocktail. Don't dare leave the Serena. Don't go for those cocktails I don't know where. The Serena cocktail is in a world of its own, so don't leave it around. The sponsors have been kind enough to make sure we have it. We are having this conversation to see how do we finance the 10-fold growth, not just for the fun of it, but remember, 2 children per minute, they need a very big economy to survive. Moses, let's do what we do best.
Thank you so much, Fred, and thanks to the panelists. You brought up a lot of issues that I think will help us as we are continuing with our ideas on financing the tenfold growth. And thank you, audience. I think you've really brought in a lot of good ideas on how we can finance our tenfold growth. I want to say I was also a teacher in my earlier life. And the students that I taught, and most of them are still alive, have been wonderful people outside school. Most of them, I don't know whether there's a student of mine here today. Most times I find them. But they are very good. Where they are very comfortable. They are working so hard. They have skills. And the people they work with, they appreciate them. So I just wanted to give that. And I think also the children, the students of Fred have been given the skills. And I've seen them here. They are going to write. So they know how to write, how to read, how to calculate. So I really don't have a lot of pessimism as far as Ugandans are concerned. And why we are here today, we really wanted people to give us more hope on how things can be done. I have so many stories or success stories of how we can do certain things. I know we have talked about productivity, but Ugandans, wherever they have gone outside this country, have been performers. So I don't know why we still talk about productivity. I've never seen a Ugandan chased out of a job outside here because of productivity. I hear the Ugandan doctors are the ones working in Nairobi. When you go there, you find them, they treat you and come back. When you go to South Africa, it's the same. And some of them are all over the place. So I have a lot of faith in the capacity of Ugandans. I've also been privy to the research and development that has done by Ugandans. It's so much. Some of us may not believe what what people are doing. There's Professor Muranga, if you know her, with her PBID project. That is some research and development. I know it hasn't reached commercial level that we want it to be. We have Mr. Musaz and the group, the engineers who are working on Kira Motors. You have seen the buses that are coming up. Those are Ugandans. Those are Ugandans. I'm just giving a few examples. We have people doing the anti-tick vaccines. We have Biopharma, one of the biggest pharmaceutical plants in Africa. It's there, Mr. Magola. You can go and see it in Matuga. There are so many things that are happening in this country that we should also believe in and applaud. For me, I'm a very big believer in Uganda and how it's coming. UDB, of course, is not all talk. Like I think she mentioned, it's not all talk. There is something. We are not there yet, but we are injecting more money. As we are looking at ATMs, we say, where can we put our money? UDB is one area where we can put our money. UDC is one area where we can put our money, where we see that private sector is reluctant to invest. Yes, we are taking a risk and going ahead. I think a risk is a way of life. We are not taxing anyone to prosperity. In Uganda, our tax to GDP ratio, whatever we call it, is 14%. It is very low. We are not saying we should tax people who are giving us money more, but we should expand the base and bring in more money. We have done studies and shown that actually right now the capacity of Ugandans to pay is about 18%. So we have a 4 percentage point without really breaking anyone's back. There's so many people out there who are not paying that we should be looking at. And we struggle even with the expenditures. We may say we are spending a lot of money, but we looked at the budget, for example, of Parliament. Because we have so many parliamentarians, we should reduce them. I agree. But then when we look at the numbers, how much is Parliament spending out of the 58 trillion budget? They are spending about 600 billion. The judiciary is about 350 billion. So the majority of money is actually not with them. It is somewhere else. And I don't agree with you when you say when they establish these units, so much money is spent on SUVs for the chairpersons and what have you. I've not seen us buying those SUVs. Not really. I know the cost of administration. We should reduce the cost of administration, and that money we have being put in the ATMs. That's what we're really looking at. Why do we de-invest in Umeme? I think a decision had already been made. Umeme has been good, but the cost at which we have been having Umeme as a partner, there are so many onerous terms in their contract. And we think that is one of the reasons why the cost of electricity has not come down. Because you cannot pay somebody 21% rate of return on investment at 21%, whatever happens. You cannot pay somebody and they don't even reduce the leakages in their power supply. They don't care because they are assured that at whatever point they will get 21%. So that is really the reason that government moved to do away with Umeme. Government assisting farmers, why isn't it assisting farmers? I think on those specifics, we'll look at that and see how to assist farmers, but we know that issues of efficiency, Dr. Fred has always been talking about them. In the districts where there are tractors, some of them were actually found to be on the farms of politicians and other influential people, rather than helping the entire community. They have just, you find them packed somewhere and they are not even being used. So those are things that we need to really address. Julius, concentrate on what we are doing, what we are good at, and we should encourage savings. I agree with you, but yes, we think we are good at the ATMs. We need to change. We cannot continue looking at just one thing. We have studied this, and that is how we say this is what we are good at, and that's what we should concentrate on. And you will mark us on those ones where we did, whether it's true or not. On Robert, he talked about systems integrity, data integrity. I agree with you 100%. But people in IT tell us about risk cybersecurity. You have to be on your toes every time. And you can't beat these people all the time. The hackers, they can hack any systems. And they have hacked, I think one time, they hacked Microsoft system, and for about 3 or 4 days, there was no activity. They can do it. So it's how prepared we are. Otherwise, it is something that we cannot say 100% that we are foolproof. But on the data integrity, we are trying. Some of these gaps, yes, we have noted, and we have also tasked our data collecting agencies to be more alert. Grace, you talked about if we use NSSF money for Kampala-Jinja Expressway. Are there checks and balances? Well, Patrick cannot invest unless he's sure that there are checks and balances. So you should trust him in that. I will not elaborate further. Stephen, you told us about where there's a plan for minerals. Yes, there is. There's a plan for minerals. We have a new law. We have also decided to have a mining company, Ugandan mining company. It was recently inaugurated. It will be the one to invest with the other people, because we also want to have a production sharing mechanism like we have in the oil and gas. Alan, I've noted the statistics. We can discuss the statistics further, but yes, we are putting money in production. I mentioned it when I was making my speech, that is in the ATMs, this financial year is 3.4 trillion. And we are going to increase, even in this next budget, we are saying let the money be put in these areas. That's why I said we are repurposing. One of the ways we are going to finance the tenfold growth, we are repurposing the budget to put money in areas where we think will generate growth. So that's what you're looking at. Jen had it correct, the inefficiency in not only local governments, but even in central government. We are still inefficient. And there's a time when in cabinet, and this was being raised, that of course a lot of us in public service don't do our work as we're supposed to do it. And the president said there are SOPs for the military, and they are working. What's wrong? And there are SOPs for public servants, and we said they are there. And he said if they are weak, let us strengthen them so that public servants can work. So the head of service was tasked with amending the standing orders to make sure that public servants do actually work as they're supposed to. I hope this one will come out soon. If it was with us, I will tell you the timelines, but yes, it's not with us. The governance in cooperatives, yes, it's really a big challenge, because people come, they save together, and then at the end of the day, someone carries a bag of money and disappears. It has happened to so many powerful cooperatives. Talaya Mawogola, that was in Masaka, someone disappeared with over, I think, 2 billion shillings. Banyankole Kweterana, someone disappeared with almost 2 billion shillings also. So there are so many. Initially, they look so good, and then when the money is a lot, someone grabs it and disappears. So there is that issue of trust. I know we didn't put it here in our opportunities for financing, but the trust is so important. Daniel, you raised good points. I don't think I need to add anything on that. And Jeff, yes, I will invite you soon, really, to discuss how capital markets can help in financing the tenfold growth. Stephen, you also raised a lot of issues. You talked about the risks, the climate change risks, how they are disruptive. Yes, we have that in the NDP4. I didn't want to bring all these things here. What we are seeing as the risks, and then the mitigants, all of them are there. But yes, I've noted all the issues that you have raised, the regional sovereign bonds, the diaspora bonds, the blended financing. Yeah, I think we'll take up all this as part of our discussions to improve our paper on the financing for the tenfold growth. Oh, I didn't mention one thing that was on oil. The exchange rate, I agree with Fred. I don't want to discuss it here, but I agree with you 100%. That's how it is. Because you can't have an exchange rate, you put it there, and the following day, we don't have dollars to finance, to pay our loans, or even to give for people to go and buy goods outside. So it's good that we have an effective exchange rate, a real exchange rate. And right now, I don't think it is. That's my opinion, so I agree with you. On oil and gas, we have tried to insulate the non-oil economy once the oil money starts flowing in. Two things. One, we have said that the money from oil and gas will go to the petroleum fund. And it will come out of the petroleum fund into the budget. And the other one into the petroleum investment reserve fund. How does the money go? It is appropriated, but there's a fiscal rule for the money that goes into the budget. It is 0.8% of the estimated GDP for the previous year. 0.8%. So it may be a lot of money, but at least that is the cap. Two, it is to finance development and infrastructure. It's not for recurrent. So we're not going to pay salaries out of this money. It's meant to be that. And actually the money that we got out of the petroleum fund was used to finance infrastructure. We paid our portion for Karuma and Isimba. Then, of course, three, the investment. We said we don't invest this money into this economy. We invest it outside because we want to protect our non-oil economy. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kagwa. Another round of applause for Mr. Kagwa. Thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We've come to the end of our interface today. I would like to call it a prescription session because, and I would like to appreciate all of you, for keeping to the norm. Our norm when we're beginning the economic summits was that these are not going to be sessions of lamentation, but sessions where we come to try and find solutions to the pressing issues of the country. So thank you very much. And as we close this, I'd like to implore all of you, we have quite a number of platforms at NTV where you can plug in and pick more of these conversations and even more debates and ideas that are crucial to our growth as an economy and as a country. Once again, thank you and good evening. For the panelists, I've been asked that we need a group photo here with the panelists.